Do you feel vindicated by hearing what Dr Cass has said?
Well, in a way, it's not quite the right language. I mean, I understand why you put it like that, but I mean, the first thing to say is just how terribly sad this is. That so many generations of children and young people have been so terribly let down. My report in 2018, which was based on a number of clinicians working at the gender service at the Tavistock, which was the NHS service for England and Wales, brought many very serious concerns, and that was the basis of my report. And all those concerns, as you're implying, have been borne out by the Cass review. This is the most thorough, extensive review of gender services for children ever undertaken anywhere in the world. And the results are very clear that the so-called affirmation model, that means if, for example, a girl says, I need to be out of my female body or I'm a boy, affirming them has been completely the wrong clinical stance. The right clinical stance is neutrality, exploration, and understanding all the other multiple problems these children have that are being expressed through distress about their gender. Cass has been very clear about that these children had many complex problems and have been terribly let down, first of all by being put on a medical pathway which was inappropriate and which has been considerable concern about the damage done to children by puberty blockers and by cross-sex hormones, but also that the other problems that they had were not properly addressed. And the Cass review makes very clear, and the NHS has already started acting upon it, that these children need to have their multiple problems properly addressed by a proper clinical service that acts in such a way following the ordinary canons of clinical care, instead of what's happened, which they were totally captured by trans ideology, so it became an ideological issue rather than a clinical issue, and it is that that's caused the damage. There's still considerable work to do, for example, with schools, many of the schools are still allowing children to be given seminars and talks by gender ideologists who follow the affirmation model. There's lots of work to do with detransitioners, and I'm really pleased that Cass mentions them in the report. These are the kids who changed their mind and having to live their rest of their lives with the irreversible consequences of medical and often surgical treatment, and they need special care as well. So this is a huge shift.
Yeah, ideology replacing common sense. Built on shaky foundations, no good evidence, says the report. Are there any cases in which prescribing puberty blockers to under 18s would be appropriate?
Well, the simple answer is no. The reason to say that is it's not appropriate to talk about a transgender child. It's appropriate to talk about a child who's expressing multiple problems through their distress about gender. It is true that some of the children who express their distress through gender later on in life, say when they're 18 or 19 or 20 or so on, or in their 20s, may still decide that they want to transition. But if you take a population, for example, of 100 children, the evidence suggests that that will be a very, very small minority. So, and we don't know which those children are. If you say there's Group A which will desist and Group B which will continue, there's no way of telling which group is which. But there's a lot of evidence suggests that the group who will change their minds is much bigger. And those children who do go on eventually in their 20s to transition, they will be doing it on a different basis. They'll have thought a lot about it. They won't have been precipitously put on the wrong treatment. They'll have a lot of time to explore and will be in a much better psychological position in order to make a judgment. These children were not in a position to make that judgment.
Doctor, how concerning, is it to you that doctors have been scared of appearing transphobic, which is why they have not wanted to speak out? Is that something that you witnessed?
It is certainly something that I witnessed. The clinicians who came to talk to me, there were 10 of them, 9 of them refused to see me in my room at the Tavistock because they were frightened of being seen by their bosses on the gender service. They're frightened of being intimidated. Many of them had been already intimidated. For example, there were some gay and lesbian clinicians who were very concerned that these children were confused not about gender, but about sexuality. And as we know, many of them, if left alone, will emerge as gay or lesbian adults. And they were intimidated and taken off the cases. That was really quite shocking. And that has been the same everywhere. That in NHS services, that people who raised issues about being concerned about the penetration of ideology had been intimidated. This was certainly the case at the Tavistock at the time, as you say, Cass has made this clear in the report. As you may know, the lead for child safeguarding, Sonia Appleby, was terribly intimidated and took her case to an employment tribunal, which she won.
Okay.
But this is not just a Tavistock. This is a whole cultural problem that there's been there. People have been frightened, and that is now changing. The pendulum has swung, and the Cass report gives a huge momentum to that pendulum.